territory where Carlos Bullosan once lived to tell the story of the rain, sweat, glory of Mike Jackson men who fight the destination we were destined to end. Left a writing on the wall in the halls of the Nippon Khan. Others transformed, majority Decepticons, but my conception of the...
All right. It's the Wait for It Seattle podcast, and somehow we're in mid-March. It doesn't make it's crazy. Man, so St. Patrick's Day is tomorrow, I believe.
That's
Do you have
correct.
any St. Patrick's Day traditions? Do you like the holiday? Where does it fall on your list of your power ranking list of holidays?
It's a great opening question. It's not on the top. You know, I actually find it sort of annoying when people are mad that you don't wear green. And I'm like, I did one of those spit tests. I'm like pretty Irish, more than I thought.
Yeah.
But I just think it's silly. Like I get mad. I don't like it when people tell me what to do on holidays, you know?
You are a curmudgeon, man.
Kind of. When it comes to holidays, I really am. I really am a curmudgeon.
Well, this is Brian the curmudgeon, and this is Kevin, and we've just found out that he just probably doesn't like St. Patrick's Day as much.
Well, here's the deal about tomorrow, though, Kev.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we don't have school. So it is Seattle Prep celebrates Stanislaus Kostka holiday.
Yes.
Who is a
best
Jesuit, old Jesuit from Poland.
Yeah.
It is he is the patron saint of Seattle Prep. And we take a random spring day off just to have a day off. And here's what's great. It's St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
I will be able to go check out some bets at the casino on this St. Patrick's Day because no one else will be here, my family.
Yeah.
By the time my wife listens to this, I'll have already be at the casino. So.
Well, speaking of bets, we're going to launch the SeaTown Sports Bracket Challenge, men's and women's. So
let's go.
After I edit this podcast, I'll launch both on Yahoo Sports. I'll put up a post and send out an email. So by the time you listen to this, you'll probably already see the post and hopefully join the bracket challenge. I can't get around what we should give away. Like I have this Dom Canzone autographed baseball and I just don't know what to do with it. Do you think someone
kind of awesome?
Okay, so like maybe let's give away the Dom Canzone baseball. Okay.
I don't think I can give away my Aaron Curry autographed jersey as I outlined in the podcast before because I received it on the day the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. It has sentimental value.
Yeah.
But that's a good one, Kev. That's a good one.
So we'll give away a Dom Canzone autographed baseball to whoever wins. I'll send it over. So we're going to cover 3 things here on this episode. It'll be short and sweet. I got to be the master of the outline since Brian was coaching mock trial. And by the way, his team made it to the national tournament, which means he can just coach everything. So
do you think there's a big crossover between the basketball community and the mock trial community? I don't know.
I'm a lawyer and I love basketball, right?
There you go.
Have you heard there's a great article about the Supreme Court and it's called The Highest Court in the Land, and I think it was in like Time magazine, but the Supreme Court is all up in like into basketball, like the clerks the people.
Wait, what was this on? I got to read this.
It's called, just search the highest court in the land and then just maybe Google Supreme Court basketball and it'll talk about this subculture.
This is my new life.
Great. So anyways,
I will say briefly, like I spent the weekend in Tacoma at a hotel with lots and lots of supervising lots of teenagers, watching them compete, which watching kids compete in anything is always fun. Kids did great. There was a dance at a YMCA last night.
Oh, wow. So they do a whole thing. It's
so you start the day watching kids compete for like 3-hour rounds where they do this fake case and they're being lawyers and stuff. And that starts at 8:30 in the morning and the dance starts at 8 p.m. that night. And I will tell you what, I used to work at a YMCA. This is terrible planning. What are we doing? Why are we having a dance at 8 p.m. after the kids and the adults have been doing things all day? But the YMCA in Tacoma is an amazing facility. And there was I'll call it epic. It wasn't epically long, but it was an epic Franklin High School Seattle Prep 14v14 volleyball match going on in the YMCA. So the kids were getting loose and crazy.
Wait, doesn't
very
it say
appropriate ways.
doesn't Isaiah Thomas like have a court there? Like, didn't he like?
This YMCA is affiliated with UW Tacoma and actually is
Got
a
it.
beautiful court. And I don't know if
Yeah.
Isaiah Thomas is involved, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome. Like they could play district games there. There's no bleachers or anything, but the court is awesome. Of course, that's what I'm doing. You know,
Yeah.
everyone else wants to talk about these cases and things that you'd
Yeah.
probably love, Kev. And I'm
Yeah.
like, guys, have you seen this basketball court? This is
By the
amazing.
way, this kind of reminds me of a funny story between me and you. So, when I was in high school, you were super, and this was back in the day. This was 2008. I was a student and I competed in the National History Day, and you
That is
were
true.
also supervising that.
I
And
was,
so
yeah.
I went to do my thing at like I think I had to do like a presentation or
Yep.
something, like an interview in Green, was it at Green River?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, I
Yes,
think it was
yes.
at Green River or somewhere like that.
Yeah, Green River Community College, I
And
think. Yeah.
then I like left because there's a ceremony after like kind of what you're saying, right? Where they announce the winners and stuff. And I was like,
Oh,
I
I will
don't want
never
to,
forget this, Kev.
I don't want, I'm going to the Sounders game. I'm going to go with Alex Wilson, who was a classmate. He invited me to go with him. I was working on SeaTown Sports at that
Uh-huh.
point.
Uh-huh.
And
Where
then,
was I, Kev? Where was I? Was I at that Sounders game? By the
no,
way, I was a season ticket holder. Wasn't there because
I
I'm a
was at the,
responsible adult. I stayed at the ceremony listening to all these kids screech and yell when their history papers got excited. Talk about a nerd fest, Kev.
yes.
And then your name gets announced as the state champion for the National History Day competition. And I have to go up and accept on your behalf.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
On that note, let's move into the
Yeah.
actual news. UW's women's basketball, 11 seed, they're
They
in.
did it. We've
They're
talked
in.
about this for weeks. Yep.
They're in. The first time in 8 years, first time since 2017. I read the great article by Percy Allen, who's been covering the team all year. And they'll play Columbia at 4 o'clock Pacific time on Thursday in North Carolina.
Mm,
And it's a first four game.
I will not be there.
So, yeah, you're not going to go to North Carolina.
No.
You know who's probably going to be there is Bill Belichick.
Mm.
Steve Belichick might be there, maybe all the Huskies that transferred.
Kamari House will be there.
Kamari House. And what's your reaction to this news? Are you, I guess my question is, do you count this season as a success already because they made the tournament?
For sure. This was the step I felt like they needed to take, especially going into. Well, here's what's weird about the women, right? The men clearly went into a better basketball conference and they bottomed out. The women went into a better, maybe. Like the Pac-12 was so good at times, right? With Stanford at their peak and Oregon State was a Final Four team, right?
Yeah.
So it's debatable, but because it's 18 teams and I believe 13 made it, I don't know, maybe 12 made it. I'm not sure if
12.
12
Yeah.
made it. Okay. So that's pretty ridiculous, right? It's 2/3 of the conference. So it's probably top to bottom because USC and UCLA came in and are number one seeds. It's a better conference. Making the tournament is a big deal. I don't care if they're the 12th out of 12, they made it. That's a big step for them. That's awesome.
So I think people so you've played and competed or coached in tournaments, and I think it's so interesting because you get all the time well, not all the time, but you get more lead time to prepare for the first game.
Right.
And then if you win that first, let's say they win on Thursday, their next game against an opponent is in 2 days.
Right.
And the women's team is also traveling to North Carolina, so query when they'll travel, and they're not really going to have intense practices. But then again, they've also been off.
You don't need intense practices right now. Either.
You're just
like
peaking,
that's not
right?
what it's all about. It's not physical reps; it's mental now.
Yeah,
and it's really important that you're just ready to go. Your scouts are so important. This is where your assistant coaches come in.
Yeah.
This is where I'm really hopeful that they're, this is going to sound maybe a little ageism of me, but like they have pretty young assistant coaches, not all of them, but a couple. And two of them are pretty brand new. Like, how many scouts have they done in this type of situation? I think all of that matters to a certain extent.
Everyone's watching Columbia basketball games right now as we
Yeah,
speak.
fun local slant here. So Mia Broom, who went to Lakeside, is a
Yeah.
freshman
Yeah.
at Columbia. She's one of the best players I've coached against. She's phenomenal. I way back in the day went to like basketball camps and things with her dad. Her dad is also a high school coach. She's awesome. She's a incredible competitor. She's in the rotation. So that's fun. That makes me excited to watch the game as well. I like that it's 4 o'clock.
Yes, we don't.
These are just
It's
you just
lined
go
up
home and watch
perfectly.
it. It's great.
Yeah, gives me an excuse not to work till 5. I love
So I'm
it.
trying to look. I'm pulling up the bracket as we speak here to because this is actually my first look at the bracket. They are in which region, Kev? Where are they?
Dude, I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to find do you remember who their 6th seed that they play next is?
West Virginia.
Okay, West Virginia. There it is. I see it now. So they're in the Birmingham region. So sadly, even if they go on a crazy run, they're not going to Spokane, which would be incredible. So they're West Virginia next, and if somehow they pulled something off, they're North Carolina or Oregon State as a 14 seed. Probably North Carolina. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I really hope they win the first one because it would be fun to watch them play in a scenario where you're skipping around channels and everything because all the games are happening, right? That chaos of March Madness is so fun.
Yeah.
And I think they're dangerous. We've seen that. I mean, they finished the year so strong.
Yeah, you can get hot. I mean, if they just get a hot shooting day.
Right.
I mean,
just think
played
about
the
their
top. I don't think like when I look at West Virginia and just
Right.
looking at the seed line
Yep.
and thinking of who the Huskies have already played. And I said this last episode, and they've played them tight. Like, there's no reason why they can't just pull off some upsets.
Yeah, like
here.
Maryland's a 4 in their bracket. Yeah. They played Maryland tight. LSU's a 3 in a different bracket. We know they lost to LSU by 1. Obviously USC and UCLA are 1 seeds. They played them tight. Iowa's a 6 seed. They crushed the Huskies. That was a bad matchup for the Huskies. Illinois is an 8. The Huskies beat them. I mean, it's
a nice thing about being in a tough conference. But
yeah, I do get a little frustrated, to come back to your original question. Part of me, I knew they were probably going to be in the first 4, but like Nebraska's a 10 and is not. And the Huskies beat Nebraska by 20 at their place. And I know Nebraska finished, I don't know, 1 game above them in the Big Ten and has 21 wins. But is that I mean, they played once head to head at Nebraska.
Yeah.
Right? And the Huskies crushed them.
I'm interested in knowing the net rank, though. I feel like probably Nebraska had a higher net rank.
Sure they did, but 40 versus 43.
Yeah.
Nebraska has 4 quad 1 wins, 2 quad 2. Huskies have 3 quad 1 wins, 2 quad 2. So it's 1 game difference basically between them, right?
Yep.
Which is the difference in their net rank. And to me, maybe I put too much in the head to head. They played at Nebraska and the Huskies won by 20.
Yeah.
Huskies should be the 10 seed. Nebraska should be the 11, but
the complaint's valid because then they basically play an extra game.
Right. That's the thing. And that's the thing about the first 4. It's not just an 11 seed. They're a bottom 11 seed, right? Or whatever it is. I guess the bottom 4 11 seeds are in that. So that's kind of weak, but I'm happy for the Huskies.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
I'm gonna be watching the games and
with all that said, like the first 4 games, I'm usually like barely watching women and men.
Yeah.
Right? Because that doesn't feel like the tournament. I'm gonna be locked in. So it gives me an extra game to watch. So
Yep.
Yeah.
So UW women's basketball. How about some Seahawks storylines?
How about it?
We had Luke Braun on last week to give us a scoop on Sam Darnold, and it looks like he's settling in well. Had his presser, was wearing a flannel, seemed all happy. Didn't say anything controversial. Good start.
Also, did you see his contract information today that they can get out of it after 1 year?
Oh, they can get out of it after 1 year.
So they have to pay him like, basically 30 something million in the first year, 37 million, but they can get out of it after 1 year. And now some people are saying, wow, look at John Schneider. That's really smart.
Okay.
So I don't know all the details of that other than something came out that said, it's not like they have this huge cap hit in year 2. They basically can get out after year 1 if it's not going well.
Yeah.
I don't think that's their plan. I think their plan is to roll with this and see if it can be something for like 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
Which
all right.
probably pisses some people off.
We're going to play a little game here.
Oh.
I'm going to name the free agent signing that the Seahawks made. I'll give you the contract details.
Oh, I'm all
And
over
then
this.
I want you to explain what you think John Schneider was thinking, like why they signed this person.
Okay.
And the second thing is on your excitometer, from a scale of 1, I'm not excited at all. I'm stuck at National History Day. And 5, I'm at the NCAA tournament. This is the most fun thing ever. I'm excited. Do you get the scale?
Wait, 1 to 5?
1 to 5.
1 to 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
5 is when I was watching Caitlin Clark at Climate
Yes.
Pledge in the NCAA tournament. That was 5. Okay.
Okay. DeMarcus Lawrence.
No, you told me you were going to give me the contract. I had to guess the person, I thought.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's do it that way.
No,
then.
I'll give you DeMarcus Lawrence.
Okay.
It's $18 million guaranteed. 3 years. I can't remember the rest.
3 years, 32.5 million.
Right? Isn't it 18 guaranteed?
I don't know. I don't have the guaranteed numbers.
I think it's
ahead of
18
me.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
So what's the why did Schneider sign this guy?
Okay, I gotta
Especially
be honest.
when they're already like solid on defense. I don't know.
They are solid. Okay, so I'm getting your bias here. I have to start with this, and maybe you feel this way too.
Mm-hmm.
So last week on the podcast when we had Luke on,
Yeah.
I had just learned the name Will Freeze right before he came on. Like, I don't know all the guards in the NFL. I don't know all the defensive tackles, and I watch a lot of football. For whatever reason, probably because here's why. I know all the receivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know the Colts backup receivers. Like I could tell you about Josh Downs' career, but
That's
Alec
because
Pittman,
of fantasy football.
because of fantasy, right? So
Yeah.
so you and I are in a baseball league that we're starting. You joined the league. It's very exciting. I know all these random baseball dudes, but I don't know defensive guys because they're not in fantasy. I don't know offensive linemen.
Yeah.
So all this to say, I did know the name DeMarcus Lawrence. So that I felt like was the first good sign. And then I immediately I'm like, I don't know if he's good right now or not.
Yeah.
I saw his PFF grade is really good. And I'm like, yes, the Eagles won the Super Bowl by having awesome offense and defensive lines.
Trenches.
So I felt two things on the excitometer. So it put me at a 3. First was that's not an offensive lineman. So it was like sad. And then that guy's pretty good. So like raised it back up to a 3. So that's how I got to a 3.
Yeah. What did you think of him getting interviewed by Hawk Blogger and saying, I was never going to win a Super Bowl in Dallas, so that's why I came to Seattle. Like, what did you think about it?
That was fine. I was like, ooh, spicy. But then when Micah Parsons clapped back at him and said something, and then Lawrence clapped back and said, if you spent less time on social media and more time working out and getting on the field, maybe we would have a shot at a Super Bowl. I was like, let's go. What is happening?
Speaking of internet fights, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
But
I mean, I liked it. You need an edge, and you can never
they play
have
the Cowboys this year? Do they play?
That's a good question.
Let's see.
But you can never have enough good defensive linemen, in my opinion. So I'm all for it. Let's go.
Yep. Okay, so do I give you the name or do I give you the contract?
Well, there's not that many people left.
Okay.
I mean, are you going to give me Josh Jones 1 year, $4.5 million, who Luke broke the news to us on the podcast, and you and I both had to pretend we knew who he was.
1 year, $5.5 million.
Oh, I thought you were this is Marquez. What is his name?
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
That is Scantling.
By the way, he just seems like one of those guys that you just pick up, and then you drop him the next week in fantasy, and he's been his
for
entire
sure.
career, right?
His whole career. Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean,
So he's fast. So here's the thing about him. For whatever reason, because he was on the Packers, he's been on the Chiefs, he's been on the Saints. I always envisioned him as like a possession dude. And I don't know if I was mixing him up with somebody else, but apparently he's a deep ball threat and he's fast. So that I liked.
Which is what Luke Braun was telling us last week, is what the Seahawks needed.
They needed. And so I'm going to give it a 2.5. I don't know. It's like, it's better than what they had.
Yeah.
I mean, in reference at the time, it was like, this is a good piece. Now it looks better in the bigger picture, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But 2.5. I don't know. What were you?
2.5. Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at the contract itself, like he could get dropped before training camp.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? They could go and draft a wide receiver.
I mean, they probably.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they should. They shouldn't win the first round. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Please draft a guard.
Yeah. 3 years, 45 million.
The Cooper Cup.
Yeah. What's your excitometer on that?
5.
Oh, you're pumped.
Oh, yeah. You know, here's the thing. The cycle of internet reactions, at least on my like social media feeds, it's like desperation for Cooper Cup. Like, this will make everything better. National people being like, the Seahawks are in. If they sign Cup, Darnold has the weapon he needs. You know, everyone's like positive. As soon as he signs, he's old, he's injured. Do you know he's only good in the slot? And so is JSN. And I went and looked it up, and they both played a ton of snaps in the slot last year.
Yeah.
Then you start to get the counter claims, right? Like, so Cup's a good blocker. They're going to try and run more. JSN can play outside. Cup can play outside. You know, all these things. So it's like this whole cycle of nonsense. And my thing is, with Cup and Darnold, I think they ended up saving $15 to $17 million.
But what are they saving for? Like, what are they going to
put other people on the roster?
Yeah. So we're not done yet. Seahawks aren't done yet.
No, they have a guard, Jenkins, coming in tomorrow, who played on the Ravens, I want to say. This is about all I got on guards here, Kev.
Yeah.
But if they sign him and they draft a guard, all of a sudden we're back to a 10-win team who doesn't make the playoffs. No, I don't know. I mean, the ceiling's not Super Bowl.
Yeah, what did you think of the, like, well, why did we get Cup when we already had Lockett?
No, see, this, to me, that's silly.
Okay.
To me, like, people are living in a world where Tyler Lockett is 5 years younger.
Yep.
Like, Tyler Lockett is awesome. Second best Seahawks receiver all time, right?
Never takes hits. I think
Not
that's
the last few years.
I think that's the difference.
And if he is, and maybe a couple have the same problem, right? But like, was Lockett getting open? Was Geno firing the ball at Lockett all the time? Because no. I mean, and they obviously had JSN and DK, and even DK. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't have 1,000 yards this year, right?
Yeah.
So you're saving $15 million for 200 yards. I know it's not that simple. I understand DK shaded coverage in a way Cup won't. Yeah. But like, I don't feel like what we had with Geno and DK was like what the Niners are experiencing, right? So the Niners have gone to the Super Bowl multiple times with the core on their team.
Yeah.
And now the core is gone. Like, all the dudes who made that team good are gone.
Yeah.
Because it's line and it's even skill guys. They're trading Debo. They just traded their backup running back, Jordan Mason, who's awesome, to the Vikings of all people. We should have Luke on. And the Niners had a Super Bowl ceiling.
Yep.
Seahawks don't have a Super Bowl ceiling. They had a 10-win ceiling. And the people who are against getting rid of Geno and DK, who both, by the way, said, I don't want to be in Seattle. So John Schneider's just supposed to be like, hardball, like whatever. How about you save $15 million, acquire picks, and you probably have the same ceiling. So to your point earlier, like, what are we saving the money for? I just think it's still the right thing to do to make them different. Like, the different 10-win team. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to go win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But they're retooling in a way that allows them to be more malleable and flexible. So great.
One last question on the Seahawks. I want to see if we have a feelings match here. So my feeling after Geno Smith and DK Metcalf leaving, I'm not like sad at all.
Yeah.
It just doesn't affect me, right? Russell Wilson affected me. There's been departures from other.
We talked about this last week, right? Our trades.
Our other sports teams where you feel affected. These two guys got traded.
Yep.
And I don't care. I had no, and they never, and I think it's maybe on them, honestly. They never really, I never felt through their play on the field or through how they were off the field that they ever made a connection with Seattle. And that's more so even worse I think it's even worse in two respects. Geno Smith's the quarterback, right? Never really became like, he might have put up better numbers than Matt Hasselbeck. Not as much success, but he just never became the guy. And then DK, same issue. Never became the guy. He had the same consistent, like, off the field, on the field issues in terms of his play was affected by dumb things he did on the field. And that just never changed, even as he progressed. So I think it's weird to think that our two best players last year, arguably, on offense, actually no, maybe 2 out of 3.
You could say it. Yeah.
But
I think it's fair.
They're like, it has. I don't feel sad about it, and it's weird. It's weird to think that we had two really good players. I don't think we can disagree about that.
Nope.
And no one really cares that they left. No one's up in arms about this. It's crazy.
I agree with your sentiment, but different reason. My theory is that, especially coming off of an era of 2 Super Bowls appearances, obviously 1 win, and Hasselbeck took us to the Super Bowl. Sean Alexander, right, who you love, Super Bowl. Walter Jones, right? They're iconic because they got to that point, and we didn't get that. And this goes to my original point. Like, I'm not going to get sad about guys off a 9-10 win team. Russ, for as like crazy as Russ was, he brought the greatest moment in my Seattle sports history, right? Like, I told you I was 6 months old when the Sonics won the championship. I don't have a memory of that. Russ winning the Super Bowl, even though he wasn't a huge part of winning that game, he was the quarterback. Even throwing the interception in the second Super Bowl, which is the worst moment in Seattle sports history, is still also the Super Bowl. So it's like memorable. It's in our core. It's part of. That's why Russ, Earl, and Sherm, and Cam, and Bobby Wagner. Like, when Bobby Wagner came back and then left again, and I saw him as a Pro Bowler in Washington, I'm like, this is sad. I don't. You're right. I don't have those feelings for DK and for Geno.
I wish him well. I wish him well, and I think it's actually cool that Geno is playing with Pete Carroll. I really think that's a cool
I'll
thing.
be fascinated what happens there. And the Steelers will be on in Monday Night Football like 17 times. So we'll see them without a quarterback throwing the ball to him. I love all the stuff about George Pickens and DK, and like them fighting people and stuff. Like, I heard this story that at the end of the year, Pittsburgh threw a Hail Mary and Pickens was not involved in the play. So he just started beating somebody up on the other team. He was blocking, right? But he started just like wailing on them, and like, oh God, the first game where Pickens and DK get unsportsmanlike conduct penalties is going to be just epic for Pittsburgh. So but Mike Tomlin's my favorite coach in the NFL, so that'll be fun. It'll be fun to see them in those places, and for Cooper Kupp to come home, as you tweeted and talked about, like you wrote that article when he was playing high school basketball, and for him to be in Seattle, I think he'll get a huge ovation.
Yeah,
I think
it's like a dream come true for him, probably, right?
Yeah, and maybe we just like knew, right? Like, I don't know. Geno's first year, I was like, this is cool. He's better than Russ. Like, I was all excited, and then it just gets kind of stale, and I'm sure that'll happen with Sam Darnold, or we'll be like, oh God, what is Sam Darnold halfway through the year? I mean, Luke told
Did
us
you?
he's exciting, but also like it's a roller coaster. So
Yeah. I just realized that the two quarterbacks on Seattle are both named Sam. So how do you think the quarterback coach deals with two quarterbacks named with Sam?
I don't think they talked to Sam Howell. So who cares?
Man, Sam Howell, man, that's
Taking
brutal.
strays, taking strays.
Oh man. Uh, Speaking of taking strays, well, actually, maybe I asked for this smoke, so
You asked for
I
all the smoke
definitely
on
asked
this.
for all this smoke. This was great. So, Caroline, my sister, made a graphic like back in October, and this was when I was still on parental leave for our top 10 Seattle pro athletes, and it's a really nice graphic, and I just came across it uh, this weekend now, and I decided to post it.
You posted it everywhere.
I posted it on Twitter and Instagram, and I think Instagram's
You also
synced
posted it
with
on our
Threads.
Facebook page, which is the worst place to post
Yeah,
anything. You probably haven't
yeah.
even checked the replies on that one. Oh no, you
Uh,
have. You've replied to people. Yeah.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was synced with Instagram. That's how it got on there.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, shout out to Lauren. First of all, preliminary.
This is
thing.
the best. This is very cool.
So I tagged Lauren Jackson, or I like
Our number 6 all time.
requested her to be like a collaborator on the post, which basically means if I post it, it also shows up on her feed. So, there wasn't any like reaction that was happening like the first couple hours, and then my watch just started buzzing over and over and over again. And then I opened up the app and I noticed that Lauren Jackson had accepted the collaboration. So, uh, there were all these Lauren Jackson fans, like the Australian national team Instagram reposted our graphic.
It's
And so
amazing.
there were all these things coming in, comments flowing in. Um, and
Shout out to Lauren Jackson.
yes,
Like Lauren Jackson, I don't think you're going to come across this podcast, even though you've totally engaged with us now. But we would gladly have you on to talk
yes,
hoops.
yeah,
If you're listening right now, I have coached high school women's basketball. That's my credential. So
yeah,
we can come talk about Spain pick and rolls. We can talk about ice coverage.
yeah.
Whatever you want to talk about, Lauren. We can come on and talk about.
The amount of times I responded to comments and said she has 3 MVPs was pretty funny.
Kev, the
But
patriarchy is real. It's
yes,
so real. Like people are just crapping on Lauren Jackson being in the top 10 for Seattle, and they're just citing Steve Largent, old white guys, and just like they have no appreciation for women's sports.
no,
It's
no.
absolutely ridiculous. I want to just verbally poop on everybody who did this. She has 3 league MVPs. 3. There's no one
On our list.
in Seattle sports history who compares individually to her accolades.
Yeah. I mean, so some of the
You
ridiculous.
could make an argument she's number 1.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know why I put this there, but I said there were people, and it was Lauren Jackson's fan base, right? Because it was posted on her Instagram. But people were arguing she belongs above Sue. And I think
Yeah,
if you
that
were
was interesting.
if
Yeah.
you were to make it not about Seattle, I think that's a fair argument. I
Right.
think that you could have made the argument that, I mean, just her whole body of work, like for Australia, and then like the longevity of her career. That
Well, we got a
yeah.
good text from someone who basically said like, "What's your criteria?"
Yeah.
And our response was like, "Whatever we want." Like,
Yeah,
it
it's
wasn't quite that,
subjective
but
thing.
it's subjective. Although we did say, I'm going to pull this up, that we said does not include individual athletes, no college, no Kraken. They haven't been around enough.
Yes.
Only while they were in Seattle, and then the rest was just what we decided, like what we felt like
And
was most important.
honestly, I feel like people had a hard time. So whenever someone would come up with like, "Oh, so and so should be in there," and then I'd
Yeah.
ask them, "Who would you kick out?"
They never
They
respond.
never responded, and I think that just
This is
goes to show-
America.
Yeah, Right. So some of the takes
Or
that I thought
Australia.
the ridiculous take was like I mean I just kind of stopped, but I found it funny. This person was like Jermaine Kearse belongs above like who's Lauren Jackson basically. And I think it goes to what you're wearing right now is everybody watches women's sports, right? So no one there was no respect for Lauren Jackson. I mean, Jermaine Kearse wasn't even in our top 100.
We debated him around
Yes,
the
we
100.
did. I mean, if you look at his
And Kev's a
stats,
Husky homer, and we
yeah.
didn't get Jermaine Kearse.
I was almost going to say, look at his actual statistics and you'd be shocked. Anyways, there was a lot of people reordering the Mariners.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting, and I think we had a
Well,
little
two
bit
things,
of,
two things,
yeah,
two things. Hold on, let me pause you.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you,
yeah, go ahead.
because I think you were going in a different direction.
Yeah,
There were people who said like the Mariners haven't won anything.
yeah,
How do you have four guys in your top 10? And then I think you were going to reference this later,
yeah,
but like where are the 1979 Sonics in your top 10?
yes, yeah, yeah,
And I I get it. Like there are people.
yeah,
I have a really good friend. Shout
yeah.
out to Ravi, works at Nike, who's like championships over everything. Right? Which I just find to be silly. So Trent Dilfer is an all-time quarterback. Joe Flacco is an all-time quarterback. Dan Marino's not. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Right? There's levels to this. So Ken Griffey Jr. to me is the greatest baseball player of all time. I know that's not what everybody believes, right?
But if you said the greatest player in the 90s, I think there's the argument to be made, which is a whole decade.
Sure. The more people are going to agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Edgar is a Hall of Famer. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. You know, his numbers speak for themselves. Randy Johnson, or sorry, who was Randy?
Ichiro.
No, Randy's not. Ichiro, of course, right?
Yeah.
Ichiro has 3,000 hits in America. And if you count his Japanese hits, he's the greatest hits player of all time. Randy is not in our top 10. There was some debate about him and Felix Hernandez. Felix is probably similar to Gary Payton in some degrees, and Sue Bird, as you were referencing earlier. Like their Seattle time is so iconic, right? And if you compare, can I just do this? The Felix and Randy Johnson, because we were getting this question. So Randy's a Hall of Famer, not with the Mariners. Part of his time. He was a 5-time All-Star, won a Cy Young. Felix Hernandez also won a Cy Young. Felix Hernandez is a 5-time top 10 Cy Young and a 6-time All-Star in Seattle. He's first in wins, first in ERA, second in shutouts, first in strikeouts, first in innings.
And a perfect game and a no-hitter.
So, like, it's counting stats, which isn't always, you just played longer than the other guy in Seattle.
Yeah.
But that's the point. If Randy was here and didn't force a trade and played in Seattle through 2001, Randy Johnson might be number 1 overall if he won. And, you know, like if they'd won a World Series and he won another Cy Young here, if he had his stats like he did in Arizona, sure.
Yeah. I think that, and that was kind of the most subjective part of kind of assessing impact in Seattle. And I think that there were definitely like sexist overtones with just discounting Lauren Jackson. And it was interesting because there was not as much discounting of Sue Bird. Like no one said Sue Bird doesn't belong.
Right.
Which I found that interesting. And it's maybe because Sue was just around longer.
Yeah, I think people started paying attention to women's basketball while Sue Bird was still playing.
Yeah.
And people weren't watching women's basketball to the same degree when Lauren Jackson was playing.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. And I will even say I didn't watch as much.
Yep.
And I wish I had, because I remember how awesome Lauren Jackson was, but I wish I was like deep diving like I do now. Like,
yeah.
I mean, we've talked about the UW women's team in depth and like which player is more impactful, El Ladino, Deleadenos, and we're talking about Devin Coppinger minutes. Like that's cool,
different.
right?
Yep.
We don't care about the men's team because they're a freaking garbage heap.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, and we talked about the Storm when they played last year. How often do we talk about Jewel Lloyd forcing a trade and all that? And I think the discourse is better. I think there are Storm fans who've been there the whole time, and shout out to them who are vouching for Lauren Jackson. But yeah, to your point, people are ridiculous. Like, stop being sexist. Stop letting the patriarchy run your lives and discount Lauren Jackson's contributions.
So there were two other takes that I think that were fair.
Yeah.
So the most prominent take was that Steve Largent isn't in the top 10.
Yep.
And I think I've seen him as a top 5 player, Seattle athlete.
Yep.
Like if you go on the Wayback Machine, at one point I wrote like the Mount Rushmore of Seattle sports, and I had, Gary Payton, Ken Griffey Jr., Steve Largent, and someone else. And the argument for him, I think, was just that he was iconic, right? He's something that Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner are not.
Well, here's where I think criticism of us is fair, to your point.
Yeah. Yep.
If we have Felix Hernandez as 8, Edgar at 7, Ichiro at 4, right? Even Gary Payton at 3 and Griffey at 1. None of them won, right? Griffey at least went to the playoffs. Ichiro was on a 2001 team, but Felix, you could make the argument, like, what has he won? And I think we knocked Largent below Russ and Bobby Wagner as iconic Seahawks, and Walter Jones to a certain extent, because Bobby and Russ won. And that's probably not fair to have it one way or not the other.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's kind of the calculus we were making this whole time. But I mean, I think that's kind of like, it's a great debate. And I think the other argument that intertwines with it is whenever someone said so-and-so should have been in. So whether it was Largent, whether it was Randy Johnson, whether it was Sean Alexander, someone said Sean Alexander should be in the top 10.
You were so happy.
The person that they always kicked out was Russ. Like there is still this like, it's still existing that people just don't really like him. And I think people will come to appreciate him as time passes. And it makes me wonder, like, where does he, like, do people like A-Rod more than him? Like, the way he left wasn't actually as bad as how some of these other people left, like demanding trades and, saying things about Seattle on their way out.
There's an argument, right? So Russ, to be fair, Russ is 10 and Largent's 11, right? So I don't know. I mean, Cortez Kennedy is 12 and Bobby Wagner's 9. Bobby Wagner is a 6-time first-team All-Pro. I'm not arguing Bobby Wagner, nor was anyone else, I guess, fairly, right?
Yeah.
Largent's 7-time Pro Bowl, first-team All-Pro, 4-time second-team All-Pro. Russ is a 9-time Pro Bowl, 4 times top 5 in AP Offensive Player of the Year voting. He's also a quarterback. So it's close. I mean,
Russ won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, what do Pro Bowls mean? I don't know. Cortez Kennedy is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's got a Defensive Player of the Year award. He's 3-time first team All-Pro, 2-time second team, 8-time Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, they still feel right. I do wonder, to your point, actually the other way as time goes on, even though people might hate Russ less, if the recency bias for me would push Russ down the list, actually, a little bit.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
And honestly, like, let's just be clear, everybody. I have a son named Felix who's partly inspired by Felix Hernandez, and he's an iconic Seattle athlete to me. And I think to a lot of people like Kev, who like grew up watching Mariners baseball and like,
I think that was,
and we talked about it, like the King's Court, like it's just,
that was the fairest critique because our bias is when we were alive, like no duh. And the people that were upset were basically everyone about Steve Largent. And then this actually came up more than once, was the 1979 Sonics. Like there was no one on our list. That's
not true. It's not
in our top 10.
No one in our top 10. And I'm not standing for that blasphemy. That's ridiculous.
I mean, they're like,
that's people. First of all, Fred Brown is number 35. Okay. And he's a one-time All-Star. One-time All-Star in Seattle. So the only reason he's there, his numbers retired by the Sonics, which is absolutely ridiculous. He's second all-time in points. So I'm going to slow down. It's not ridiculous. But he's a one-time All-Star. And we're arguing about a 9-time Pro Bowler and Russell Wilson? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I actually agree with you.
I looked up career PER. Jack Sikma, who people say is the best player on that team, career PR is 229th in NBA history. Gary Payton's 131st. Like, we're not comparing apples to apples here.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
79 team, people will say, and yeah, they all want to say, like, they want to pretend like we're both like 20 something year olds. First of all, I'm 46 years old, so let's stop. Okay. Secondly, yeah, I didn't watch the 79 team live, but
Yeah.
I study basketball, and people will say of all the championship teams, the 79 Sonics team is not a great championship team. They came at the right time. They won a championship. I know they went in 78. They played against a Bullets team. This was not the Showtime Lakers of the 80s. This is after some of the great 70s teams, including the Knicks. You go back to the Celtics, right? The 70s was a low point in basketball in the NBA. You have the NBA ABA merger screwing everything up. The 80s, 90s, like those teams are getting blown off. The 79 Sonics are getting blown off the court by the 96 Sonics. The 96 Sonics would absolutely crush the 79 Sonics.
And maybe Sean Kemp wasn't high enough. I think it was
so
like
all
19.
these people need to get out of here with their 1979 Sonics takes.
Oh man! All right, I knew those dudes are still alive, right?
All right, well,
they're gonna come out.
It's actually a nice segue. Like R.I.P. to Slick Watts, who passed away this week. Slick Watts is probably a great comparison to Felix Hernandez for us.
Yeah.
Like, people loved watching Slick Watts play. And if you go look at his resume, he wasn't a great basketball player. No, that's not what I mean. Like, he's a good, he obviously played in the NBA, all that. But like, his stats don't match how his persona and impact were in Seattle, right?
Yeah, yeah. Did you have any run-ins with Slick Watts or Donald Watts in your time in the basketball community?
Yes, absolutely. I coached against Donald Watts when he coached high school. Donald Watts was a little older than me, but we sort of were like, I watched him at UW when I was in high school. My kids have gone to their camps for sure. Yeah. Slick Watts, actually, when I think Felix was like a 5-year-old, he was at like kindergartner at their camp. Slick Watts said to me, like, that kid's a pretty good player. Like, it was cool. I was like, Felix, you don't know how cool that is. That's Slick Watts. Like, I think Felix won like camper of the day that day or something like that at their camp. So yeah, he's an iconic Seattle sports personality for sure. And Donald Watts is a good basketball coach. He helps a lot of kids get better at basketball. He does a lot of skill work with kids now. And we're sorry that obviously Slick passed away.
Rest in peace.
Yeah.
The Blue Scholars, one of our readers, listeners, have a great song called Slick Watts.
Yeah.
I posted that. And they have a music video where they yell out all the cities and neighborhoods on the first part of the song. And the second part of the song, they just yell out Sonics names. And it's not outdated because the Sonics have not existed for close to 20
Do they
years.
name Jim McElvain?
They do.
Do they name Robert Swift?
I don't think they name Robert Swift.
On social media this week, somebody posted a random video of Robert
Swift highlights.
Just dominating like the Clippers in some games.
Speaking of Bakersfield,
awesome.
I was just in Bakersfield. I spent 2 days in Bakersfield for work, and it didn't cross my mind that was the home of Robert Swift.
I couldn't have told you that. That's a great random fact that you know. Good job, Kev.
Okay, so anyways, I tried to engage faithfully with all the trolls, and usually people gave up after I asked a reasonable question. But
yeah, that's what I mean by this is America. Like people get on social media, post something. I guess it's better than them engaging in a weird, like, destructive way, but like they just want to feel something. Maybe I don't know what they're doing, and they just like post and then never interact again. It's so weird. Yeah,
I'm actually Anyways, shout out to Laura Jackson.
Yeah.
Let's move to our top five. NCAA tournament memories. UW basketball. Let's do UW basketball, unless you want to broaden it out.
That's a good question. Let's start with UW.
Okay.
Okay, are we doing men's, women's, both?
Let's do both and let's just combine them. So like
Yep.
you'll go, then I'll go. Let's hit 5 and then we'll go to kind of just in general outside of the Huskies.
Okay. Give me your top, just off top. We're doing this totally top of the head. Usually we research our top 5. We decided to freestyle this one. Give me your, actually last week, my one of my best friends, Lewis, texted me and about our trades. Was that last week we did the trades as top 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, I can't believe you didn't mention the Sean Kemp trade.
Oh.
We did it a little bit off top of the head. We did a little writing beforehand. But Sean Kemp for Vin Baker probably should have been in our top 5 of shocking trades. Yeah. Even though it was the lockout, he had gained a lot of weight. But okay. So we're gonna forget something. So somebody please engage with us. Text us.
Yeah. Leave us a comment and then we'll ask a question back and then you can.
Yep. So give me one. Give me just no particular order. Give me one.
I really loved the 2004, 2005 #1 seed Husky team, and now like the iconic Seattle Times photo shoot of them in top hats, and it was just such a cool team. I was listening to the Christian Capel, Danny O'Neill Husky podcast, and they were talking about how cool it was that there were so many local guys on that team, and the team was good, legitimately really good. And that to me was the peak of Husky basketball. It's been the peak. It's where we all want it to go back to. I don't know if it can get back to that, but
I mean, they'd have to go a long way to get a #1 seed.
I mean, and then they made the Sweet 16, which was cool, right? And then they ran into like a really good, I think it was Louisville.
It was Louisville.
Yeah.
I have two things to tell you about this.
Yeah.
Number one, I got into a conversation with someone this week about basically that idea of like the local guys. When is Danny Sprinkle going to do that? Bring Husky basketball back? And I countered with, well, he has a top 2 Big Ten recruiting class next year. And actually I know enough about high school basketball in Seattle. Like if he added Seattle guys right now this year, that's not a top 2 recruiting class.
Yes.
He's got better players coming than what's here right now. So I think it's relative because when Romar did it, even though Brandon Roy and Nate Robinson were absolutely under recruited, and maybe that's what guys would argue here now, but it was a golden era of high school hoops in Seattle. It was the start of it, and there was just dudes after dudes after dudes.
I mean, they landed Haas, they landed Brockman, they landed Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
Like, that all happened after the.
And there was the underappreciated guys like Will Conroy, who we talked about, like incredible point guard. Trey Simmons was freaking awesome. Like, there's just dudes. Fenoy Overton was great on those teams as a defender.
Ryan Appleby, Stanwood.
Yeah, okay, stop. Ryan Appleby, come on the podcast. Kev wants to talk to you. So I don't know. Maybe, but it's also, the new era with you're paying players, and I don't know. I just feel like it's not a fair critique when you have a top 2 class coming in next year. If it doesn't work, then maybe you can bring up the critique. Maybe it's better to stay local because Seattle does have good hoops. Number 2. This is my second story, not number 2 on our list. Yeah. When the Huskies got the #1 seed, I don't think I've ever told you this. So I went to Thailand. I was 24, 25.
Random.
Yeah, it's the farthest country I've ever been to. I went with a group of young adults. We built a library at a school in a village in Thailand that did not ever have Americans in their village before.
Yeah.
Nobody spoke English, maybe one person. It was a transformational, incredible 2 weeks. It was awesome. Here's how it relates. I left before Selection Sunday. This was pre-internet cell phone. Like, I don't even know if I had a cell phone or if I did, it wasn't international. It wasn't easy to make an international plan. I didn't talk to anybody. I emailed maybe or whatever, but we didn't have internet. I knew I missed Selection Sunday, and then that week we were in this village, there's no internet, which was amazing. Like, you're living in a village, just living by the daylight, right?
Yeah.
The dad of the the family I was staying in, who didn't speak English, woke me up after about the fourth day we had been with them, and he knew I was cool, and he like gets me out of bed. I have no idea where we're going. I get in a truck and we go to the market in the morning. We have this incredible experience. Story. And he buys whiskey in a goldfish bag because he knew the Americans like to have a good time at night.
Yeah.
And he brought the whiskey home with me. And we also had like these amazing donuts. They were always shoving food in my mouth. I had no idea what it was. It was awesome. This whole time, the NCAA first and second round are going on. We get back to Bangkok, and I was really trying to live in the moment. It was great by me, but I'm like, I got to log on. So I pay for the internet. You got to like put a card in, whatever.
This is pretty old.
Pay for the internet. Kev, I log in, I go to ESPN.com, and I have this overwhelm of emotions, like this tidal wave of emotions, because the Husky and Louisville game is happening and there's 2 minutes left and it's live. And I can't get the video, but I'm watching the end of the game happen.
And you're like, they're a number 1 seed.
No, at first I was like, oh my God, they got a 4 seed. And then I had read it wrong. And I was like, wait, they got the 1 seed? Because you may not remember this, but they should not have been the 1 seed. Louisville should have been the 1. Husky should have been the 4. It was way off. It was pre Ken Palm.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken Palm existed, but it wasn't, they weren't using
it.
They
didn't even win I think they won the conference tournament. And they didn't win the conference.
Yeah, they should not have been a 1.
Yeah.
So that was confusing, and it's like all processing as I'm watching the time tick away and they lose. And it was like awesome and devastating all at once. And then I just had to like log off the internet and go back to like the Bangkok pool.
It's kind of
the friends I had there.
It's almost like those movies where someone goes to the future or goes to the, they wake up from a coma, right? And then
that's what it felt like. I woke up from a coma. Like I was a week in rural Thailand coma. It was insane.
Great story.
Anyway, so that's what happened on your first memory. Okay.
Yeah.
So the ones that come to mind for me here are losses, which is sad.
Yeah. Let's talk about them.
All right. So the one that really comes to mind, it was before that. It's Rip Hamilton hitting the game winner over Patrick Femmerling. Speaking of Donald Watts, he was on this team. Todd McCullough, who we talked about before, who apparently hangs out at UW now. Ever since we talked about him, he was at all the games. And Rip Hamilton hit the game winner in the Sweet 16 also to knock the Huskies out from going to the Elite 8. I want to say this is like 1998.
That was a Bob Bender team?
Bob Bender team. Yeah.
And was this before the movie about the Huskies? What's that movie called?
With like the Wayans brothers?
Yeah. What's that movie called?
The Sixth Man?
Yeah. Was that before or after?
Great question, Kev. Don't know about that one, but it's a really good question. Let me see if it was 98, if I was right. I got to get to the schedule here.
It was a 1997 sports comedy.
Oh, it was right about that time.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I was right. 1998. They lost 74-75. They in the Greensboro Coliseum, Connecticut was a 6 seed. The Huskies were 20-10 overall that year. They got into the tournament. They beat Xavier in the first round, beat Richmond in the second round. They beat Richmond pretty good, and they lost to Rip Hamilton and UConn by 1 point. It was so sad.
Do I get to do number 3? So I get to do the next memory.
Donald Watts had 22 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists in that game. He was wow. They were
was
2 of
Doug
10.
Wren on that team, or was Doug Wren later?
No, here's the starting 5. People will love this. Donald Watts, Dion Luton, Jan Wooten. I don't think a lot of people remember Jan Wooten. Todd McCullough, Thalo Green. The backups were Patrick Femmerling, who was in the game, who I still think should have blocked Rip Hamilton's shot. McCullough had fouled out, if I remember correctly. Chris Walcott off the bench. Chris Thompson. Dan Dickow played 4 minutes in that game for the Huskies. And Michael Johnson, who I referenced in an earlier podcast, who was the all-time leading scorer at Ballard High School before he went to UW. For Connecticut, a little bit more famous starting 5. Khalid Al-Amin and Rick Hamilton. Our boy Jake Voskuhl was on that team, but Rip Hamilton, 22 points, including the game winner. So that was a bummer. All right, you got the next one.
Well, it's the next game. I think this one is the most infamous one. And it was a Sweet 16 matchup against UConn again.
Oh yeah, the rematch.
And this was 2005, 2006. So this was the year after the number one seed, and this was Brandon Roy's year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the game went to overtime, and it was just like a horrible collapse with like the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So the teams were tied at 86 with about like 220, 20-ish to go. And then there was just, I think people will remember like the Mike Jensen foul.
Oh yeah.
Um, it, that's for some reason that's the one thing that I remember. But I just think of what could have happened because Brandon Roy was so good that George Mason would have been the next game for them,
Oh
and they
yeah.
could have beat George Mason and been in the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that team, and they didn't really have like a post, like a true. I mean, they had Jamal Williams, but it was like a short. He was short. He was like 6'6". Um, and yeah, it's just tough. It was a tough game. Mike Jensen
Yep.
had a horrible game. I'm sorry, Mike.
No,
You were
he's been a
one for
great
five, 3 points.
post career Husky.
Yeah,
He was not my favorite to watch.
yeah.
He had some brutal games. He's kind of, yeah, I feel bad talking
I mean, but
about
this
Mike
was
Shins.
against UConn, and
Yeah,
UConn was hella good. Like,
hella
I mean,
good.
can you believe Jamal Williams had 27 points
Oh,
in that
Jamal
game
Williams was a
off the
dog. He
bench?
was awesome.
12 for 22. Like, come on now. That's awesome.
Jamal Williams, 22 shots in an NCAA tournament game. That's incredible.
I'm like looking at this UConn team. Everybody had more than 12 points or more. Marcus Williams had 26. Rashad
Oh, I
Anderson off the
loved Marcus Williams. He was so
yeah,
good.
Rashad Anderson 19. Anyways,
Marcus
um,
Williams is there's a lot of point guards in college basketball history. And I think when I played basketball as a point guard, Gary Payton's my favorite player ever, right? So like Kenny Anderson was my dude back in the day, but like Marcus Williams, I loved. Um, who was the guy in the Kendall Marshall on the North Carolina championship team, lefty point guard, just like absolutely loved him. That
yeah,
dude from Kansas State 2 years ago who had like 18 assists and was absolutely dominating. And I was like, this guy's going to be an NBA starting point guard. Turns out he's not. I love college point guards. I love
yeah,
March Madness. I'll tell you what I don't love. It's our fourth one here, and we're going to go back to the men one more time. They've had more memorable in my mind epic losses right now, so that's why I'm thinking of them. They lost the next season after my UConn reference, not yours but mine, to
yeah.
Wally Serbiak in Miami of Ohio by 1 point in the first round of the tournament. And I have another story for you, but Wally Serbiak had 43 points in this opening round game. And the Huskies, Donald Watts, who we talked about earlier, had the last shot, got blocked. Huskies had a chance to win. It's stuck in my head. Maybe because it's college, right? And for me, I'm like watching a lot of the tournament. But here's why it really sticks in my head. That next year, I went to a journalism conference in Washington, D.C. Okay. I don't think I've told this story on the podcast.
Man, these stories are great.
Okay, so I was the sports editor at the Santa Clara newspaper. My buddy was the editor. Shout out to my buddy Joe Tone, who is now sports editor at the Washington Post. No big
Why
deal.
haven't we had him on the podcast?
Oh, we need to have him on the pod. He'd be good. He wrote a book. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Anyway, Joe's great. But Joe hired all his buddies to do all the jobs at Santa Clara. So all the guys in my house like had jobs, business manager, whatever. Like we all had jobs at the newspaper. One of my best friends, Dave, was a sports editor before I was a sports editor, right?
Yeah.
We all go to a journalism conference in DC, paid for by Santa Clara. And we're out there, and I could say this now. Kev, I went to one session the entire weekend. Santa Clara University paid for this trip, and I just went. We went to bars in Georgetown. We hung out. We went all over the place. We sightseed, whatever. I went to one session. It was not my best moment, especially since I thought I wanted to be a journalist. Real waste on my part. I regret that. But we met these girls from Miami of Ohio. Okay. And we hung out with them, like very innocent, no scandalous story here, right? Just cool people. We were hanging out, the hotel, whatever, the five of them. But they told us that Wally Szczerbiak came back to campus after he got drafted by the Timberwolves. And nobody really liked him when he was there because he was just kind of awkward and annoying and full of himself. But this is the best part. He comes back to campus. He's in the NBA. He's clearly going to be recognized when he goes back to his college campus. But my guy is wearing his Miami of Ohio jersey with no undershirt just around campus just to make sure people know it's him. What a loser. What a loser. Oh, it's so good.
You think of that every time you see him on
every
CBS?
time. He's on like CBS, and he seems fine. Maybe he's a nice guy. I shouldn't call him a loser now. I don't know him. But at the time, and they were like, he was a tool. That's the word they used to use. They're like, nobody liked him, whatever. And he had just dropped 43 of my Huskies and beaten them the year before. So I didn't like him. So there you go.
Well, Szczerbiak.
I think we have to shout out and we have to talk about the Final Four team for the women as our fifth.
Yeah, I think that's
so the Final Four run. I looked up some stuff about that team, right? I remember being in hotel rooms. Again, I don't know where I was. I think it must have been, who knows? What year did they go to the Final Four? Kev, do you have this on you?
2000. God.
Okay, 15, 16. So this would have been 2016. So I think I was on I went to like men's tournament games with buddies from college, same guys I was just talking about. Yeah. And I was watching every minute of that women's run in the hotel rooms. Kelsey Plum was dynamic, but I have to shout out Chantel Ossofor.
Oh yeah, with the flat-footed threes.
Yes, but her run, Kev, in the tournament was incredible. So they beat Stanford. This was the one I remember being like shocked, right? Huskies had a bunch of upsets in a row to go to the Final Four. Chantel Ossofor against Stanford, 24 points, 18 rebounds. Like, what a double-double. Kelsey Plum had 26 in that game. Also, shout out to Jenna Moser, who is their now director of men's ops at the school. She was on that team. And Seattle Preps coach Talia Walton had a great tournament as well. In fact, in the win over Kentucky, Talia had 30 points, but Ossofor had 19 points and 17 rebounds. Like, those are back-to-back games.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Incredible. And you're right. The flat-footed threes were so good.
She's a assistant coach at Gonzaga. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very cool. That team did not play a lot of people. They played their starting five basically, and they just went for it. Like they were Mike Neighbors. They lost to Syracuse by 21 in the Final Four, which is not great. I kind of remember them having a plan for Kelsey Plum. Like they just ran everybody out. And Ossofor, sorry, I had to say her name wrong. I always call her Ossofor for whatever reason. Had 3 points in the Final Four game, so that didn't go great.
They shut her down. Yeah. Well, let's wrap this way.
Wait, I have one where we have to wrap because you texted me this.
Yeah.
We're gonna give a bonus one here, real quick. It's a top 4. Okay.
Quincy?
No, you sent this to me. This has nothing to do with Seattle sports.
Oh.
You said rank these Seattle restaurants in order.
Oh, yes.
You're so excited.
This
is our bonus. We got to end with this.
Let's end with this.
People can stop listening if they want, but the local people will like this. This is from Alex SSN on X. He's been a Mariner hilarious tweeter for years.
We've been blogging since he was old school.
Yeah.
You tried to hire me.
He doesn't. I don't think he blogs or anything.
He doesn't do anything.
Like
he's just
anymore.
A person. Yeah. He's a great guy. Funny guy.
Taco Time, Dick's Drive-In, Ivers, And it's a picture of Toshi's, but it says Seattle style teriyaki.
Yeah.
So do you have to be Toshi's or can we go Seattle style?
And Seattle style teriyaki.
Okay. Can I throw a fifth on there so we can make it a top 5?
Sure.
Red Mill Burgers.
Okay. That's fair.
So we have 2 burger places, which probably goes against the purpose because they're all different types of food.
Yeah.
But I think Red Mill is pretty iconic in Seattle.
Yeah.
Or you could go, you can go Pagliacci Pizza. You want to mix it up and have a 5th type of food?
Yeah. I was also thinking Seattle Pho. That's pretty legendary as well.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
All right, we're going Pagliacci. I know Pagliacci's not the best pizza in Seattle anymore. There's so many. You're not even up here. I gotta take you to all these pizza places. Stevie's Famous in Burien. They're really good. Big Mario's in White Center. Let me tell you, my son Lincoln vouches for that one. Like, Pagliacci's not the best, but it's my family's eating it tonight.
Yeah.
It's a Seattle icon. Okay, so Taco Time, Dick's Drive-In, Ivar's, Seattle style teriyaki, Pagliacci pizza.
Okay, if I had to rank, all right, I'll just rank them and then I'll just say one thing about my ranking. So number 1, I'm going teriyaki, Seattle teriyaki. Can't get it anywhere else. Number 2, man, how did we not say Ezel's? By the way,
that's true. Well, here's why. Okay, I love Ezel's. I think it's great. I think the original Ezel's by Garfield High School is a different flavor than I've said this on the podcast, than the Ezel's that's in West Seattle by me.
Yeah.
They're both Ezel's.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the Heaven Sent that broke off and, they had the big dispute, which is shut down now. But like Seattle's not known. I guess we're not known for burgers either, but like people don't think of fried chicken when they think of Seattle.
Yeah. So number 2 after teriyaki, I'm going to go Dick's. Number 3, I'm going to go Ivar's. What's left? Number 4 is...
You got Pagliacci and you got Taco Time.
Yeah, number 4 is Taco Time. Number 5 is Pagliacci.
Okay, we're pretty close. I'm number 1 is Dick's Drive-In. And my friends from out of town are like, it's not that good, blah, blah, blah. Like, listen, it's a go-to for me. Like, it still hits.
What's your home Dick's? Like,
we don't have one. I mean, I think someday it'll come to West Seattle.
Yeah. But would you say like
my home
into the Broadway one the most?
Yeah. At Broadway or 45th. In high school, it was 45th. Like all my friends lived sort of Wallingford, or a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it was on a route to a lot of like destinations that we would go to. Things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've probably been to 45th more, but Broadway's close second. Lake City Way is third because I lived in Shoreline.
I like the one right near Key Arena, though.
Queen Anne 4, Holman Road 5th, because no one goes to the Holman Road one.
Yeah.
Also, one time post college, I had a police officer tell me I might not be allowed back at that Dick's Drive-In. So,
man, all the great stories. So, what's your order?
I'm not telling you the rest of the story.
What's your order?
It's actually very safe. I mix it up all the time now. I don't have a go-to order. What's your order?
A deluxe strawberry shake and fries.
Your shakes are good.
Yep.
I go 2 cheeseburgers and then dip them in tartar a lot. But when I go 2 cheeseburgers with the fries, I don't feel great afterwards. All right, I'm going Dick's number 1, teriyaki number 2. If I want food and I'm like, I don't know what to get, like teriyaki, it's Seattle teriyaki. It's amazing.
It's so good.
Number 3 is Taco Time. Taco Time's a staple for me. It's amazing. Like I love Taco Time. Number 4 for me is Pagliacci. Like we get Pagliacci all the time, and it's very close. It's the closest food to Seattle Prep, so it's like a nice lunch. Although they didn't have slices when you were there. Now they do. Number 5 is Ivar's because I don't go to Ivar's. Like I get it.
Yeah.
When I go, I'm not disappointed. By the way, I'm fine with it, but I'm not like, hey guys, let's go to Ivar's. Like no, nobody. Does that.
I've gotten the clamp like. So we live where I live, where my mom's house is in Seattle. We're near Renton, so they have it on the water, right? Like,
that's a good one. Yeah,
by Coulon Beach. But yeah, I agree with you on Ivar's.
No, you said it was number 4.
It's distinctly like a Seattle thing.
Agreed.
Like, it's not like, oh my god, like we got to go there.
Yeah, weirdly, this sounds worse than it is. I think they still have Ivers at Husky football games.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have them at Mariners games. And when it's cold, a little cup of that Ivers clam chowder at a game
really good.
Is good. And it kind of sounds gross to get chowder at a game at a concession
really
stand, but it's a nice one. And the Mariners, they used to do the bread bowls. They just get a giant sourdough bowl and then you could eat it. And then you have the bread you could dip it in and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they stopped. Everything at Mariners games is now cheaper versions. So we should talk next week when we preview
food.
Well, when we preview the Mariners, the Mariners have some new value menu items that I'd like to talk to you about.
Yes, let's chat about it.
All right. Yeah. Next week, Kev, I'm excited. I know you warm up for 4 months to baseball.
Yeah.
But next week on this podcast, we will just be days away from Mariners opening day.
Yep. All right. See you next week.
Logan Gilbert on the mound.
Go Mariners.
Go Imps!